Hey, what's up everyone? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the SH Figuarts Super Mario figure. This is the standard figure, none of the part sets. I'm going to do those individually in case people want to look up those individually and not have to sit through a whole video. So this is just the Mario with whatever accessories he came with. That's what his packaging looks like if you're not sure when you see the pictures. You should be sure, but just in case, there's that. And so we have the Mario figure itself. I'm just going to go through what comes in the box. So we have Mario, we have a mushroom, we have a coin with a little stand for the coin. I'll just show you that right now. That just pegs in there, and that way you can stand the coin up as you might see it in the game. And then we have the question mark box. Okay, so we'll go through all of those things individually after we take a look at Mario. He stands roughly, depending on how you have him posed, about 4 1/4 inches tall. Now, if you'll remember back around Toy Fair time, I saw this guy at Toy Fair and did an in-hand preview of the figure, and I was pretty impressed at the time. However, looking back and now looking at this figure in hand again, I think I might have been a bit smitten, a little bit overexcited perhaps that we're getting a good articulated Mario finally, so I might have been a little too generous, because in hand, looking at it now, I'm actually pretty disappointed. I'll go through the whole thing and you'll see why. I'm going to say right off the bat, it does fit the role of an articulated Mario figure. As you can see, it looks pretty good, and we can get him into some poses, so it'll be okay. It'll do. It will suffice, but it will not be impressive. It's actually quite unimpressive and quite disappointing, but we'll go through that. So the head sculpt itself, the sculpt is great. I love the way the head looks. He does only have the open mouth head. There's no way to change that out. It doesn't come with any other heads. Maybe down the line they'll add one, because the head does pop off fairly easily. We'll get to that in a minute. But aside from the mouth being open and him always having that kind of goofy smile, the head looks great. The eyes have a little bit of a gloss paint on them. The paintwork on the eyes themselves look good. It's not actually paintwork, but you get the idea. Everything looks good about the head, no complaints there. Paintwork throughout's good. The yellow on the buttons is pretty clean, and everything else is molded plastic, so there's really no paintwork to complain about. We do have some red paint, you know, around the button, or around the overalls that he has on. So I mean, everything looks good as far as that goes, so no complaints there. The sculpt, it's okay. Now this is based more on the older design for Mario when he was still a little more chubby and not quite so anatomically correct as we've seen him in more recent games such as Smash Brothers, which I know most people are buying this figure for a Smash Brothers role. So it would have been nice to see him with some longer arms, a longer neck, not quite such the little round body, little short stumpy body. However, this does harken back to the Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars design a little bit for me, and that's one of my favorite games of all time. So I wouldn't mind if somehow they're able to mix that license in with this and we can fill out that roster. That'd be cool, and he fits that, but he doesn't quite fit the Smash Brothers motif. It will do, but it's not quite there. Okay, so let's talk about the articulation. We've gone through just about everything else. Sculpt is okay as it is, but the articulation. So the head, as you can see, it basically sits right on top of the body. There's no neck to speak of. So the articulation that we have, he can look back a little bit and he can look forward a little bit. That's about it. Now, if you'll look, the joint itself is just the hinge there and a ball peg. It's much more limited than the standard SH Figuarts neck peg. Why they did that, I have no idea. Especially when he's got this big fat head and a fat body, it really hinders the articulation. And if you'll look, putting the head just a little bit higher, that's not snapping it down, gives him a much better stance. It extends the body, it lengthens the body a little bit, looks great. So if they could have incorporated a longer neck or a neck at all, it would have been awesome. Putting the head all the way down just makes him look like that old boring Mario design, and it makes for a bad figure because you don't have the articulation you want. And he just has no neck. So it's really rather disappointing. And the swivel is just about useless with the head all the way down. So what I would suggest is pull the head about halfway up off of the ball peg so that it's still held on. You can see from the side there's a gap now, but once you pose him you won't be able to see the gap, but you'll still be able to pose the head a lot better, and it'll make the figure look a lot better by extending that neck a little bit. So I know it's not ideal to have a gap there, and unless you're going to modify the figure, you don't have much of a choice. I would definitely suggest experimenting with that when posing your figure. Pop that head up just a little bit. Now the shoulders, we have a ball peg, a giant ball peg. That part that connects into the torso is just a ball peg. And that's it. We don't have anything else. That's the only articulation for the shoulders. Unless I'm missing something, and I don't see how I could be. That's all we have. I thought there was a lot better range of motion when I saw it, but like I said, maybe I was a little bit blinded by getting a Mario figure. There's almost no range of motion in the shoulder, and that could have easily been fixed. So far, there's no problems on this figure that couldn't have easily been fixed before final production. I know it's a cheaper figure, it's only about $20. I'd rather pay $30 and get a good figure. I don't understand why they did this. So the arms are essentially just a swivel. They have almost no range of motion at all. The elbows, we do get a bend. We go from straight to, I don't know, 80 degrees, so that's okay. But again, the articulation is much more basic than your standard SH Figuarts. So it's okay for the elbow, but it would have been much nicer to give him the longer arms of the newer designs and give him the proper articulation with maybe even a double jointed elbow. For the wrists, all we have is a standard swivel. There's no articulation in the wrists at all. All they have is the swivel. So, and the bad thing about that is they connect at an angle. So it's always at an angle no matter what you do. It's just kind of awkward. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but if you're going to give us a swivel, at least make it straight. So that's disappointing as well. Again, none of these things are like enough to say don't buy the figure no matter what. You can get some posing done, but it's just going to be a lot more limited than I think is ideal. You know, it's just really limited. He has no waist swivel at all. That's a huge disappointment. Definitely shouldn't be the case. His hips, this whole part here, swivels forward, which I showed that in the preview thing. So that works okay. You can bring the leg all the way forward, and it doesn't ruin the sculpt, other than the fact that the sculpt is already ugly in that regard. It only looks okay with the legs down. If you bring the leg forward, it just looks weird. Pretty weird. So that's it for the hip. You don't have any side to side in the hip at all. You only get that right here in the lower hip, where it's just this weird kind of, it's actually a ball hinge, but it just doesn't work very well. That's all you get to go side to side. And the way it pivots, it doesn't even pivot naturally. This should swing out more, not fold in like that and give him this weird little, looks like he's trying to hold in his pee or something. I don't know. It's really not good. You can't make him do a kick or anything. So if you're trying to do Smash Brothers displays, forget about it. I guess you could technically rotate his leg around backwards, and you can't really tell because of the way they designed it, but I don't know. It just looks weird, and especially having the back of the knee showing. It's really disappointing. And speaking of the knees, since that's where we are now, when you bring the knees forward, there's just a little bit of a seam, and you can see that knee joint back there, and all you get is this hinge right here. It goes almost 90 degrees, but it's just a very basic hinge, which I guess they were trying to continue the thickness of the pant leg. It could have been done so much better. It's just, for being so minimal, it still kind of hinders the sculpt. It's just, I don't know, it could have been done so much better, so it's really disappointing for me. The ankle, I haven't looked at this too close. It looks like it's a hinged ball peg, so I believe the top part of that blue bar in there is actually on a hinge that goes forward and back, and then it's just a ball peg into the shoe. It might just be a double ball peg. I'm not positive because I haven't pulled it apart. It feels like a hinged ball peg, but it could be a double. Either way, so that gives you the foot. You get a little bit of an ankle rocker, not a ton, and then you can bring the foot down some, but then you have that big opening in the front, and you can bring the foot up some, but not a whole lot. If you have him standing straight, you can't bring the toe up too much. It's really just like that, and it's just awkward and poorly executed. It really feels like they just phoned in the whole figure. As you can see, once you have him in a stance, and I have to say stance because you can't pose him too much, it'll look fine. It'll be just fine to set on a shelf, be part of a display, no problem. However, don't expect any sort of dynamic posing at all, especially if you put the head all the way down. You really can't do too much with it. It's gonna just not be effective. And you'll see what I mean if you don't have it yet. You'll see. If you do have it, I hope you realize the problems it has, because maybe if we are aware of these things, they might do better in the future. It does look fine once you get in his stance, but the number of posing options are extremely small, or is extremely small. It's just disappointing. I'm really upset to be saying this. I wanted it to be awesome. It just feels like they didn't put that much effort into it, so I'm really upset. All right, so let's look at the accessories real quick. We have the mushroom. It feels like a solid piece of, not soft plastic, but like non-dense plastic. What's the word for non-dense? Maybe that's it. I don't know. They painted everything except for the red, it looks like. The red is the molded color. The white spots are painted. There is sculpt work, so there's like a seam going all the way around. They're painted fairly well. Everything's mostly clean. The pinkish skin-colored parts are pretty clean, and the eyes are pretty good too. So no complaints there. It does sit on the table, so no problem. You can't see that, but it sits flat on that flat spot right there. So that's good. We have the question mark box with a peg hole in the bottom. We don't have a peg for this yet in this kit, which is odd. I would think that they would include a stand at least for this since it has it. That's not good, but whatever. So everything's sculpted on this. The question mark is embossed. The little screw holes are engraved, if you will, and they're all painted. So this looks good. It's hollow, but it doesn't feel cheap, so that's nice. I'm okay with it. Just to give you an idea, this is about 1 3/8 across. The mushroom is a little bit bigger than that. And then we have the gold coin with the clear base I already told you about. It is hollow as well. I wouldn't have minded if it felt a little heavier, but they did do a good job with the gold vacuum chrome, so I'm okay with that. And it is about just under 1.5. So those are the accessories. I mentioned how this doesn't come with a stand, and neither does Mario, but he does have a removable back piece, and you can't do anything with that yet, but if you buy one of the other kits, you can, so I'll explain that in the review for that. So there's the review for Mario, guys. I'm really sorry to tell you that it's a much more disappointing figure than I was hoping for, and maybe I just had high hopes for it, and so that's why I'm upset. But I think for a character like Mario, we should have all had high hopes, and I think you guys can probably understand where I'm coming from. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.